Trying to beat the rain, Patience Cavanaugh hurried up the single main street of raw Nevada City, but large droplets began to pelt her way ahead, leaving that distinctive smell when spring rain mingles with the thick dust of a dirt road. She wasn't sure why it mattered to her if she were wet or not. It wasn't likely anyone would be taking any second glances. She knew all too well her figure was a bit fuller than her younger and more slender counterparts in this frontier town. She sighed and hurried on, clutching the basket of fruits and vegetables from the market. But her real worry was how she would survive here without a single tenant yet in her boarding house. Run down though it might be, it was the only place of its kind in a small town busy with newcomers coming and going. Many of those were miners, hoping for a gold strike at Alder Gulch, and when they did, strike gold that is, everyone knew before you could holler Jack Rabbit. A few folks stopped in for lunch now and then since she'd hung the new sign over the boardwalk, Creekside Inn. She'd kept its original name in her beloved grandmother's memory. Wouldn't Granny be sad to see her once beautiful boarding house fallen into neglect since her death? But Patience didn't have the wherewithal to make the needed repairs, and most of the miners didn't have the wherewithal to pay her for room and board, even if they were so inclined. Poor Granny. But poor me. What have I gotten myself into? Moving to a town where she didn't know a soul, only to realize how long it would take to return the boarding house to a thriving business. One glance at the dilapidated clapboard building provided all the evidence she needed. Reaching the front door just as the bottom fell out of the dark cloud above her, Patience hurried to the kitchen with her purchases, looped her cape within easy reach on a nail by the back door, and decided a good cup of coffee and a fire would take the chill away, maybe lift her spirits a bit. Then another long afternoon, waiting, hoping, and praying. Jedediah pushed the desk drawers shut and stared out the window to the other side of the street. Some movement had caught his eye, and he stood up, his hand automatically going to his gun holster as he moved closer to the window. Outside, a man, reins for his horse in hand, cast furtive glances around at his surroundings. He sidled up to a chestnut horse tethered in front of a store and quickly released the cinch underneath the horse's belly, yanking the saddle right off the horse's back. Just as the man slung it onto his own horse, Jedediah snatched his hat from its nail and ran out the door of his office. "Hey, you! Hold it right there!" Jedediah's shout brought all street activity to a stop. He waited, right hand loosely resting on the holster. "What? You got a problem, Marshal? Can't a man saddle up his horse in the middle of this here town?" The man paused, his hands on top of the saddle. "Not when it's a stolen one," Jedediah warned, his tone and gun-ready stance carrying more weight than the words. A small audience was gathering. He moved forward a few steps across the street, and the man pushed his cowboy hat back, then spit a long string of tobacco juice into the mud in front of Jedediah's boots. "You accusing me of something, Marshal?" He looked around at his silent audience with a sneer and reached for the saddle's straps. "Don't have to." Jedediah narrowed his gaze at the young fellow. "That horse belongs to my friend Monty, and I'd advise you to put his saddle back just like you found it. But either way, you'll be getting acquainted with the jailhouse." He spoke deliberately, took another slow step, and started to pull out his gun. The man looked at the weapon, wavering with apparent indecision. 2 doors down, Jedediah heard the front door of the Creekside Inn slam back on its hinges, and a quick glance showed a young woman starting up the boardwalk toward them. Jedediah already had caught a glimpse of the new proprietor. He hadn't spoken directly with her yet, but he'd heard her name was Patience and that she was attempting to reopen the boarding house.